There are 5 deeply rooted emotional tendencies in women that, when understood and handled with intelligence, give a man a distinct psychological edge, not to manipulate, but to relate on a level few others can. These are not superficial tricks or tactics. They are insights into how women experience emotions, and how attraction is wired into the female psyche. Let's begin with the first core element, validation sensitivity. Most men assume that showering a woman with compliments will win her affection. They imagine that frequent expressions of admiration are always welcomed, always rewarded. But neuroscience and real-world observation suggest otherwise. Every time a woman receives praise, especially regarding her appearance, her brain triggers a small release of dopamine, the reward chemical. It's pleasurable, yes, but like any stimulant, it has diminishing returns. If the stimulus becomes too frequent or predictable, the effect fades. This is how emotional tolerance builds. A woman who hears she's beautiful 10 times a day no longer feels anything when the 11th man says it, but when praise becomes rare, selective, and genuinely earned, it suddenly regains its power. It's the scarcity of validation that makes it valuable. The real mastery lies in understanding this psychological economy. Think of validation as emotional currency. Spend it wisely. If you deposit too much, too often, its value collapses. But if you maintain just enough unpredictability, if she's never entirely sure when or how your praise will come, then each word becomes meaningful. This doesn't mean withholding affection altogether. It means offering it in a way that feels genuine, precise, and tied to deeper qualities. Compliment her for her thoughtfulness after a kind gesture. Appreciate her intuition after a clever insight. Celebrate her resilience when she overcomes difficulty. Because the truth is, every woman desires to feel seen, not just as attractive, but as valuable. When you validate her identity beyond the surface, you satisfy something more profound than vanity, you nurture her sense of worth. Now let's move into the second emotional dynamic, the uncertainty paradox. At first glance, it seems contradictory. Women often say they want emotional security, clear intentions, and honest communication. And they do. But at a deeper, more primal level, there's a part of the female brain that is irresistibly drawn to uncertainty. It's not confusion she craves, it's intrigue. Mystery. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the human mind to fixate on incomplete experiences or unresolved situations. This principle is just as applicable to romance as it is to storytelling. A woman's mind will naturally linger longer on the man whose thoughts, routines, and feelings she cannot fully predict. This is why overavailability becomes dangerous. The man who replies instantly, shares every detail of his life, and constantly reassures her may seem like a dream on paper, but in reality, is exhausting. He leaves nothing to curiosity. No mental stimulation. No questions. Instead, powerful attraction thrives in the subtle space between presence and absence. It's about letting her know 70% of who you are, your character, your values, your intentions, but keeping that 30% cloaked in quiet mystery. You don't need to fabricate drama or play games. You simply allow her to discover you gradually. When she asks how your day went, you don't owe her a full itinerary. A few evocative details will do. Had an interesting call this morning. Might shift my plans a little. Then change the topic. Let her wonder. When she asks about your goals, offer vision, but not a blueprint. This forces her to lean in, to ask more, to imagine. And that imagination. That's where attraction deepens. The most compelling men are not those who act mysterious, but those whose lives are inherently layered, rich with purpose, and not fully on display. You become intriguing not by hiding, but by living fully and letting her discover you piece by piece. Now let's uncover the third, and perhaps most instinctual, emotional trigger in women, their competitive desire reflex. This is a hardwired survival trait, not a cultural invention. For thousands of years, women have evolved to subconsciously identify men who are desired by other women. In the primal economy of reproduction and survival, a man who could attract multiple partners was perceived, accurately or not, as genetically superior, socially valuable, or psychologically dominant. Today, this dynamic persists in more subtle ways. You've probably seen it. a man goes unnoticed until another woman starts flirting with him. Suddenly, he's interesting, desirable, even magnetic. Why? Because female psychology uses social proof as a shortcut. If other women want you, there must be a reason. Her brain doesn't need to evaluate you from scratch, it just copies the collective verdict. But here's the nuance. You don't need to flaunt other women to trigger this reflex. In fact, doing so can backfire and make you look insecure or manipulative. The real secret is to live in such a way that women naturally respond to you, and let her witness it. When you're at a gathering and women initiate conversations with you, when they seek your insight or laugh sincerely at your jokes, the woman you're with notices. Even if she doesn't say a word, a quiet shift takes place. Her subconscious files the interaction as proof, he's socially desirable. This creates a paradoxical pull. She begins to value you more, not because you chased her, but because others might. However, this must be balanced with intentional clarity. You are not a passive flirt, you're a man with options who chooses her. That contrast, availability in a sea of demand, is what ignites deep emotional investment. Now let's move into the most refined of all emotional dynamics, emotional leadership. This isn't about dominance. It's about stability. Emotional leadership means that your internal world remains grounded, especially when hers is turbulent. Most men misunderstand this entirely. When a woman is anxious, frustrated, or overwhelmed, their instinct is to either fix the problem or mirror her distress. Both are ineffective. What a woman truly seeks is a man who becomes calmer when the storm hits, not colder, but more composed. Someone who doesn't absorb her emotions but gently contains them, because when her emotions spiral, she doesn't need you to react, she needs you to lead. Imagine this: she comes home, visibly stressed. Instead of jumping into solution mode, you pause and say, "Sounds like it was a tough day. What happened?" That one line tells her everything she needs to know. You're emotionally available, but not reactive. You're listening, but you're not crumbling under pressure. The mistake many men make is thinking that masculinity lies in being stoic and distant. It doesn't. It lies in being unshakable. You become her emotional anchor, not by shutting down your own feelings, but by becoming the safe container for hers. And this is precisely where true attraction takes root. Because emotional safety isn't just a luxury, it's a need. A woman can only relax into her feminine energy when she senses that the masculine presence next to her won't fall apart when life gets messy. To lead emotionally is to stay clear-headed when others are confused. It's to speak calmly when others shout. It's to act from principle rather than panic. That's what builds trust. That's what inspires loyalty. And most importantly, that's what keeps her coming back, not for protection from the world, but for balance within it. Finally, we arrive at the fifth and most sophisticated emotional key: psychological personalization. This is the layer where most men fail, not because they lack charm or effort, but because they apply a one-size-fits-all formula to a reality that demands nuance. Every woman is different. Every emotional pattern, every insecurity, every longing is shaped by her unique history. And unless you learn to tailor your approach, you'll never connect on the level that truly matters. You see, while most men operate from generalizations, women like compliments, women want attention. The few who succeed long-term are those who observe carefully. They don't treat women as archetypes. They treat them as individuals. So how do you begin to personalize your approach? It starts with emotional diagnostics. Pay attention to her emotional cues, especially under stress. If she constantly seeks reassurance, asking how she looks, needing affirmation, you're likely dealing with a woman whose dominant sensitivity is validation. In that case, give your compliments sparingly but with depth. Don't flatter, affirm her in ways that speak to her self-worth. If she becomes frustrated when you're distant, if she floods you with questions about your past or plans, uncertainty is likely her trigger. That means your consistency matters more than your mystery. You still maintain a 30% veil, but you provide stability in your rhythms and tone. If she gets visibly reactive when other women are around, if she probes about your exes, if jealousy bubbles beneath the surface, then her wound is rooted in competition. You'll need to show her she's chosen, not by isolating yourself from others, but by making her feel secure in the presence of others. And here's the part that separates men of character from mere tacticians. You don't use these observations to manipulate. You use them to care more effectively. Her insecurities aren't weaknesses to exploit, they are invitations to love her better. To understand what she hides, and to respond with strength, empathy, and restraint. That is personalization at its highest form. When you practice psychological personalization, you're not bending yourself to fit her emotional needs, you're choosing to respond, not react. That distinction is everything, because mastery here doesn't mean becoming a chameleon. It means becoming a mirror that reflects the emotional truth of the woman in front of you, without losing your own sense of self. You stay grounded in your core, but adapt your expression so that she feels deeply understood. And that, more than anything, is what women crave, not perfection, not performance, but resonance. But this takes awareness, patience, and integrity. Most men rush to impress without ever taking the time to observe. They speak before they study. They assume before they listen, and in doing so, they miss the quiet signs, the shift in tone when a certain topic comes up, the hesitation before she opens up, the subtle need behind her words. When you notice those details and respond with intention, she feels it. She may not be able to explain why, but she will begin to trust you in ways she doesn't even fully understand. Because for once, she's not performing. She's being seen. And now that we've uncovered all 5 emotional principles, validation sensitivity, the uncertainty paradox, competitive instinct, emotional leadership, and psychological personalization, the real work begins. Because none of these insights matter if you don't integrate them into the man you're becoming. You see, these aren't tools to win women. They are mirrors that reveal who you are in relationships. If you're always flooding her with compliments, ask yourself, do you need approval? If you're terrified of giving space, maybe it's you who fears abandonment. If you're trying to be mysterious without having real substance behind it, you're not intriguing, you're just hiding. The point isn't to play psychological chess, it's to grow into a man who naturally creates attraction, respect, and connection, because you've mastered yourself first. And that's the real paradox. Once you no longer chase validation, predictability, or dominance, you become the kind of man women are magnetically drawn to. Not because you're using tricks, but because you're embodying qualities they yearn for but rarely encounter. Let's take a step back. These 5 emotional dynamics are powerful, yes. But they only work when you apply them from a place of authentic strength. That means doing the uncomfortable work, facing your own emotional insecurities, learning to regulate your impulses, refining your communication, and cultivating a life that's actually worth sharing. Because here's the truth, no strategy will sustain attraction if you don't have something real behind it. You must become the man who naturally lives these principles. A man who gives meaningful validation because he himself doesn't crave it. A man who maintains mystery because he's not oversharing to earn approval. A man whose value is felt by others, not proclaimed. A man who leads emotionally because he's learned to master his own nervous system. A man who personalizes his connection not to control, but to care more deeply. And when you become that man, the entire game changes. Women start investing in you. Not because you're hard to get, but because you're hard to replace. They recognize your depth. They feel safe in your presence. They admire your discernment. They respect your distance, and they cherish your attention. Because ultimately, it's not about seduction, it's about selection. You're not trying to impress every woman. You're choosing the one who aligns with your mission, your vision, and your emotional maturity. And from that place, connection becomes effortless. Lasting. Real. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, don't try to apply all 5 principles at once. Choose one. The one you struggle with most. Maybe it's validation. Maybe it's emotional leadership. Whichever it is, focus on mastering that single element in your interactions. Observe how the dynamic shifts. How she responds differently. How you feel more grounded, more powerful, more at ease. Because when you understand female psychology better than most women understand themselves, you stop playing the game and start shaping it. And if this knowledge resonates with you, share it. Not to posture, but to empower. The world needs more men who lead with insight, integrity, and self-awareness. The 5 emotional frameworks, validation, uncertainty, competition, emotional leadership, and personalization, are no longer secrets. They are your new foundation. Use them not to manipulate, but to build something extraordinary. A relationship based not on control, but on conscious connection. Not on fear, but on self-respect. Not on charm, but on character. Now the choice is yours. Will you scroll to the next distraction? Or will you rise and refine the man you're becoming? Because the men who integrate this knowledge don't just attract women, they inspire them, they anchor them, and sometimes, if they are ready, they transform them. Choose wisely.